From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. The Permanent Council of the Organization of American States has approved a resolution on Venezuela amidst scenes of confusion and strong objections from several member states. The session, presided over by the United States, voted by 18-9 in favor of recognizing the representative of opposition figure Juan Guaidó as Venezuela's permanent envoy to the OAS. Mexico called it a Pyrrhic victory and challenged the right of the Permanent Council to take such a decision.
The adoption of this resolution is a Pyrrhic victory for a certain group of countries, which will have no impact on the real situation, but could cause serious consequences for the OAS itself and its institutions. Among these is the following. This resolution adopted is contrary to this organization rules and to normal multilateral practice. Is the Permanent Council the appropriate body? Are 18 votes a sufficient threshold? There is a real risk of paralysis in the organization, with a real risk of a permanent questioning of this or that representative.
Uruguay, Bolivia, Antigua and Barbuda, and Nicaragua also said the vote violated the OAS rules and put the future of the organization in danger.
The Republic of Uruguay believes that the procedures used to adopt this resolution are not in line with the norms of this Organization of American States. It considers that this Permanent Council does not have the power to make this sort of decision, and therefore it does not recognize its legal validity and will not be bound by its content.
We would like to say that the present disastrous course of a simple majority prevailing over all other matters of major significance in this organization should end in the interests of the organization and in the interests of our hemisphere. We, for our part, will continue to keep the door open for reasoned and reasonable dialogue with all member states on all issues that beset our hemisphere, in the hope that we can very quickly return this organization to consensus in decision-making.
And Venezuela has condemned the resolution passed at the OAS. The Foreign Minister Jorge Arriaza posted an official communique which denounces the flagrant violation of international law by a group of U.S. satellite states when they recognized the political puppet nominated by Donald Trump. This according to Arriaza. It says that Venezuela will not recognize any decisions taken by the OAS with the participation of such a spurious emissary. And the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, met with an international Red Cross delegation in an official visit to the country on Tuesday evening. In the meeting at the Miraflores Palace, the Venezuelan government showed its willingness to establish cooperation mechanisms for assistance and international support that respects the law. The Red Cross delegation shared its evaluation of the situation in Venezuela, underlining its availability to help construct the dialogue pushed for by the Venezuelan government. Indigenous leaders in Colombia have denounced President Ivan Duque for not meeting with them after almost a month of protests. The National Indigenous Organization of Colombia, ONIC, said in a statement that Duque has ignored their demands and failed them by not attending the scheduled meeting in the Department of Cauca. The statement added that the social Minga protest will continue. Tuesday marks 71 years since the assassination of Jorge Eliezer Gaitán in Colombia. Gaitán's death set off a great wave of violent protests across the country. The biggest of these was the Bogotazo, a 10-hour riot which left areas of Bogotá destroyed. Gaitán devoted his life to fighting for people's rights, and he also condemned abuses suffered by campesinos at the hands of the elite. His death led to worsening violence and inequality across Colombia, which is still gripping the nation. And victim associations have commemorated the National Day of Memory and Solidarity with the victims of the armed conflict. The Women Victims Association paid tribute to women who have suffered sexual violence, have been kidnapped or killed. Other events were held around the country to honor the victims of the armed conflict. The UN Refugee Agency moved more than 100 refugees from the Ain Sara detention center in South Tripoli on Tuesday to a safe zone as fighting for Libya's capital intensifies. There had been heavy clashes near the Ain Sara center in recent days. Libya has become the main conduit for African migrants and refugees trying to reach Europe, with many detained in horrendous conditions to prevent them from doing so. According to the UN, thousands of refugees and migrants are trapped in detention centers in conflict areas.
Tripoli today, where we have relocated more than 150 vulnerable refugees from Ain Sara detention center, where the clashes were happening, to UNHCR's gathering and departure facility in Tripoli. We continue to call for the safety and protection of all refugees who are in detention centers, and today it's a sign that when everyone works together, we can make it happen and have these refugees who are finally safe here at the gathering and departure facility.
And the UN-backed Government of National Accord in Libya stopped an attempt by Khalifa Haftar's forces to enter Tripoli. GNA forces were seen firing rockets and live ammunition against the LNA troops. Violence in and around Tripoli has caused the displacement of more than 2,800 people who are fleeing from the fights. And analyst Rasmus Jacobson from Tunisia joined us to talk about the current situation in Libya on Tuesday.
There is a national conference hosted by the United Nations planned to start in 5 days' time, and it was expected that this conference should have constituted a breakthrough in the transition which has stalled for the past several years. And so Haftar, a lot of efforts have been invested in making Haftar buy into this conference, including most prominently in a meeting in Abu Dhabi at the end of February, where it was widely reported that an agreement had been made between him and Fayez al-Sarraj, who heads the Government of National Accord, which is based in Tripoli and recognized as the legitimate government of Libya by the international community. Thus, it was very surprising that Haftar decided to launch this military offensive on Tripoli before the conference.
Jacobson also said that if the conflict continues, neighboring countries may be affected.
The longer the conflict goes on, the more destabilizing it will be for all of their neighbors. And I mean, if the LNA is already deploying more troops to the northwest to try to gain new momentum, and there appears to be signs that this is reducing the LNA's ability to maintain stability in the other parts of Libya that they have already captured. For example, there was an Islamic State attack in central Libya earlier this morning, where the jihadist group has conducted several attacks over the past 9 months. There have also been reports about new instability in the southwest, which the LNA captured earlier this year. So the more the LNA pulls forces to the northwest to gain new momentum there, the more it loosens its grip on the other parts of the country, which of course may destabilize their neighbors.
Now to Argentina, where the grandmothers of Plaza de Mayo have located the 129th grandchild, kidnapped and illegally given up for adoption during the dictatorship. The granddaughter lives in Spain, but was found thanks to the genetic testing of samples provided by her biological father and brothers. The grandmothers of Plaza de Mayo have been fighting since 1977 to locate the children of their daughters who were detained and disappeared during the dictatorship.
We don't know her. We haven't met her, and she has only talked to our lawyers and to the members of the National Commission for the Right to Identity on their phone. We are very worried about her reaction, but I truly believe that they will be able to hug and be very happy to be able to meet each other. She will slowly get to know her family, her brothers, and the people who look for her.
Our correspondent Edgardo Esteban has more on this happy story.
People are waiting excitedly here at the headquarters of the grandmothers of the Plaza de Mayo, where it was announced at a press conference that the grandchild number 129 has been found. The parents and brothers of the woman are expected to arrive here. The woman herself is currently living in Spain, and this news has brought tremendous joy to her whole family. They've been fighting for her return for 40 years, a fight for justice and truth.
Jose Caro Esteban from Argentina. Researchers in Uruguay have developed a software to help recover documents from the dictatorship. Victims and family members of those disappeared helped in the process.
The search for truth never ends. Researchers and professors working at the Universidad de la República in Uruguay have created a software to recover archives from the dictatorship. These documents are unreadable, but this program can help with its transcription.
Y hay un programa que se llama Luisa, que es el que estamos presentando hoy, que
The software is called Luisa. With its help, we can rescue documents that are damaged and cannot be read. The program allows everyone to search the document by typing keywords. Our algorithms can help us filter that search and rescue the document.
The transcriptions are organized in a database. The name of the software pays tribute to Luisa Cuesta, who died in November 2018 at the age of 98, without knowing what happened to her son Nevio Melo. He disappeared in Argentina during the dictatorship.
We are currently working on the first phase of the project that can allow us to identify and read all the archives. But this doesn't always work automatically. There are programs that can recognize characters or words, but most of the information in these documents was written by hand or pages are damaged and cannot be read. That is why we are inviting people to help us.
The program allows users to access pictures with blocks of words and a blank page to transcribe what people can read. Then, experts use grammar rules to transcribe the documents, and then they use statistics to find out what is the keyword that was most used for searchers.
I think this will allow us access to a lot of information that many people have been looking for. We'll also be able to interpret these documents, cross-check the information and confirm if certain information is true or not. We'll be able to learn about our own history.
This software is part of a bigger project at the Universidad de la República that will help people access more than 3 million documents from the military and the archives of the former National Agency of Intelligence. To access the project, visit www.cruzar.uy and click on the tab that says Luisa.
We have more stories coming up. We'll be back.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Earth. Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Chileans have gathered at a main intersection in the center of capital Santiago on Tuesday to protest against the state's criminalization of street vendors. Our correspondent Tiare Valenzuela reports from the ground.
A little less than a week ago, in the center of Santiago, an Ecuadorian man was the victim killed by police forces during a raid of street vendors. Alberto Picuasi was run over by a police car, just like the one behind me, when he tried to flee from the police, which was surrounding street vendors along a main street of the capital. Street vendors in Chile are usually immigrants who try to make a living from selling different products on the street. This evening, people have gathered here, close to where the accident happened, to protest against the state's regulations of migrants and, of course, the overall criminalization of street vendors. President Sebastián Piñera is set to introduce a new bill to halt migration in the country, making it much harder for people who enter the country as tourists to change their visa status to temporary resident.
Tiare Valenzuela from Chile. And in Brazil, the city of Rio de Janeiro has declared a state of emergency following flash floods. Almost all schools were closed on Tuesday and many people worked from home. At least 10 people died following a storm that began on Monday evening. Some parts of the city got more than 21 centimeters of rain within 4 hours. That's 3 times the monthly average. Journalists and members of the National Assembly in Ecuador are condemning threats and cyber attacks against them on social media. They say President Lenín Moreno and his Interior Minister have failed to take action. Our correspondent Denise Herrera explains.
Assemblyman Ronnie Aliaga has presented documents that allegedly implicated the president and his family in crimes of corruption, perjury, and money laundering. Since then, the assemblyman has received numerous death threats on social media.
It is a concern. What kind of country are we living in? The lives of politicians, journalists, and assembly members are betrayed, and the government is not doing anything about it. That's why I blame President Lenín Moreno and his national security ministers, specifically Minister María Paula Romo.
Popular broadcaster Fabricio Vela, who works at Radio Majestad in Quito, has also been the target of cyber attacks and harassment. It began after he interviewed former President Rafael Correa.
When you share opinions, you become the target of attacks. It's happened to me before, but never to this extent. It's the first time that I've experienced this type of systematic attack. These imposters even create fake social media accounts pretending to be me. They've created a false, negative impression of who I am as a person and about my career.
Although reports have been made about these threats, the government has said nothing.
Mr. Lenín Moreno, you who were once my teacher, please find it in your heart to see that we are not doing anything wrong. The people on the radio, they are only communicating, just doing their jobs.
The scandal was first reported by the Ecuadorian digital outlet La Fuente in an article titled "The Offshore Labyrinth of the Presidential Cycle." One of its journalists, Fernando Villavicencio, spoke out against online threats and attacks against him and his colleague. He also pointed the finger of blame at Moreno government for failing to act in the matter. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Ecuador.
Students in Paraguay are complaining to the Ministry of Education about a lack of teachers affecting more than 2,000 schools and more than 40,000 students across the country. Members of the National High School Federation taught classes outside the ministry to show their concern. They say the government is violating their right to education with unacceptable excuses. After 2 months without classes, they believe the opportunity for dialogue is over and are calling on the Congress to intervene directly with the education minister. The Peruvian indigenous community of Fuerabamba has opened the roads connecting to the copper mine of Las Bambas. The community will meet this Tuesday to discuss the agreements signed with the mining company, which offer a compensation for using the roads. For now, the deal stopped the protest that started more than 2 weeks ago. The controversial Unexplained Wealth Bill has been passed in the lower house of Trinidad and Tobago's parliament. After several hours of deliberations, all 34 members voted in favor of the amended bill that seeks to probe people's unexplained wealth for the recovery of criminal property. The proposed law has no exception for sitting members of government. Haitian President Jovenel Moïse has announced Jean-Michel Lapon as the country's new prime minister. Lapon had been acting as prime minister ever since the Chamber of Deputies voted in favor of removing Prime Minister Jean-Henri Seon last month. He was one of 3 candidates proposed by leaders of the parliament. Haiti has been going through a series of political and social crises since February 2019, with vast protests engulfing cities across the country. Prime Minister Mia Mottley has called on Barbadians living abroad to redefine the concept of diaspora. Mottley made the call while participating in a town hall meeting in Canada.
That I need you to be active citizens of your country, that you may not be on a rock of 166 square miles. But we've already learned that that 166 square miles does not constitute Barbados.
The Douglas Charles Airport in Dominica remains closed as investigators continue their probe into the crash landing of an aircraft on Monday. The Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority is spearheading the investigation. The aircraft's landing gear had reportedly collapsed soon after it touched down on the runway. All 32 people on board escaped with only injuries. Normal operations are expected to resume soon at the airport once the aviation authority gives the all clear. We're taking one last break. Stay with us.
The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transformed the world today. On Monday, only on Telesur.
Thank you for joining us again. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has called the United States the real leader of world terrorism after Washington blacklisted Iran's Revolutionary Guards as a foreign terrorist organization. Speaking at a ceremony to mark National Nuclear Technology Day in Tehran, President Rouhani defended the Revolutionary Guards as a force that has fought terrorism since its creation in 1979. Rouhani went on to call the command center of the U.S. Armed Forces, CENTCOM, as a terrorist organization.
No one in this world, no country on earth, can claim that it has suffered more from terrorism than Iran. The Iranian nation has been the victim of terrorism that has been nurtured, organized, armed, and structured by the world powers.
Iraq's Prime Minister Adel Abdul Mahdi has warned that the decision by the U.S. government to designate Iran's guards as terrorists could have negative consequences on the region. Addressing journalists, Said said that Iraq had unsuccessfully tried to talk to the U.S. government out of this decision. He added that his country will maintain its good relations with the government of Iran.
We tried to stop the American decision. We made contact with all our friends. We talked to King Abdullah. We talked with the Egyptian leadership. We talked with all our friends. We and the government officials talked with the U.S. administration. Such decisions could have negative repercussions and non-positive neither in Iraq nor in the region. However, they have proceeded with this decision, and there will be an Iranian decision. As I mentioned it before, Iraq wants to estrange itself away from any conflict. In fact, Iraq will use all of its efforts to bring calm to the region, since it maintains good relations with both Tehran and Washington, and with all parties.
And in this context, China's government reiterated its rejection to the politics of power or the intimidation of any country.
China holds that all parties should strictly follow the basic norms governing international relations, underpinned by the purposes and principles of the United Nations Chapter when dealing with state-to-state relations. We oppose any power politics or bullying by any country. We hope relevant countries, especially those outside the region, can do more to promote peace and stability in the Middle East and avoid taking any measure that could lead to tension escalation in the Middle East.
Algeria's interim president Abdelkader Ben Salah has pledged to hold new elections within the next 90 days, in accordance with the country's constitution.
We are obliged to compete, citizens, the political class, and the state institutions, as we speak, must work to ensure the conditions, all conditions, are right for a transparent and regular presidential poll, which we will be all the guarantors, a poll that allows our people to make their free and sovereign choice.
Martin Fayulu's Lamuka coalition has won the delayed legislative polls in the Democratic Republic of Congo in the eastern region. The polls were originally scheduled for December 30th, but were postponed due to an Ebola epidemic and violence in the region. Results released by the Electoral Commission showed that Fayulu's party won 10 seats, while incumbent President Felix Tshisekedi's party won just one. With that, we come to the end of this news brief. But as you know, you can read more on these stories by going to our website, telesurenglish.net. And for our viewers in Africa, you can find us in Starsat channel 461 in South Africa and 539 in Nigeria. And you can join us on social media. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.